Jaknife, a title that you guys probably aren't familiar with, and I'll explain why in a moment. But as usual, let's start off with the IMDb plot. A vengeful former resident returns to peaceful Hinkley, Indiana. High school seniors plan their last party in the woods. Bad place for partying in the woods. Their paths cross, leading to bloodshed. Who will make it out alive? All right. So yeah, like I said, maybe you guys haven't heard about this one. This was sent to promote horror, as for a press release and to kind of share some news on it. From let's just say maybe an indie horror film here. New filmmakers with a couple of shorts out recently, and working on some feature films, and this is one of them. And so I got a screener of this one, and so just kind of disclaiming all this information ahead to do a review for it. So I thank them for sending me this over, sending me some information to share with the audience. They've made their way to a convention, and they've had a couple of this film and so forth shown in a couple of places. So trying to get it out there, trying to get the word out for this one, and to get some support on future ventures and films. So with all that said, I'm not sure where this will be seen next and so forth. Maybe they'll fill us in. But it wouldn't be surprised to see maybe it hit a film festival or two. But in case anyway, we'll help them out here and do a review hit with it. So interesting film here in the way they kind of approach it, or at least from my perspective. I just see. It's an hour and 48 minutes. So yeah, that's a good production there for indie horror here for an hour and 48. So what we have here is definitely a serial killer movie, and it is definitely got some blood and guts in it. So you guys know that I'm all for that, and definitely enjoy that. So not going to complain in that department. So basically, we have here a killer, kind of, a big dude, big heavy set dude here, and he's kind of in his overalls, I guess you want to say it, and he's got a hat on. You don't really see his face, greatly at the beginning, but he's going to kill one person, and then another person, and then another person, and many more to follow, kind of randomly and kind of all over the place. On the flip side of that, you were going to kind of see meet a few students in this school as the school year is coming to an end, and they are making their plans to kind of celebrate the end of school. Some of them are seniors, so end of school period, not only the school year but end of school period. And what their plans are afterwards and whatever, besides just partying and whatever. And then as it says in the IMDb plot, the killer is going to eventually come upon this group of kids or young adults now, and they're going to collide eventually at the end of this film, and we see what happens. So that's kind of the basics of it. Nothing wrong with that. We have serial killers, so this is a slasher film and so forth. I thought it was a little interesting. And again, I'm all for it, and I've probably said it before in some films where, I don't necessarily, need some of the BS that goes on films, and learning greatly about characters and that kind of thing, and having to feel for them or whatever. I know, lots of films do that. That's what you're supposed to do, and so forth, and whatsoever. But, I don't need that all the time. I think that's made for certain films. But I think sometimes in slasher films, you don't necessarily need all that. You want to fill some time. You want to lean on, some good acting or maybe some good writing that you have and whatever, and try to really kind of dig up a storyline and maybe put some hints and whatever this and that in the film. But sometimes I think that that's just overthought and so forth, and especially if you're doing kind of an indie horror production, maybe something on a smaller budget and so forth, with young actors and actresses who don't have a ton of experience or maybe not the best actors or whatever. Sometimes you don't want them to be on screen and doing huge dialogue moments. And how do you get around that? Well, you just have a serial killer go around and kill people, which I'm all for and I'm all fine with. So as this film kind of goes along, it kind of opens, and as it opens, you see this young guy, and he's walking down the railroad path, and he's saying a few things and so forth. And you're just wondering what the hell's going on, and then before you know it, there's this big dude just kind of walking behind him, and yeah, that's the end of him. And you're like, okay, that's the standard kill at the beginning of the movie that we're gonna get, and then we're gonna move on and learn a bunch of stuff. Others said no, we get a sprinkle of this and that, and then it is back to this killer and he kills, and then it is back to this killer and he kills, and it's back to this killer and he kills, and he just killing people at random. Like, you just meet somebody in a moment, blah blah, and then in a moment later they're dead. He just pops out of nowhere and they're dead. So I'm fine with it. I'm like, okay, this is a little bit different. We're not leaning too much into the other stuff that's going on and whatever. You're kind of getting a glimpse of that, but we're continuing to go back to this killer, and he's continuing to kill. I did have kind of thoughts in my head, like, how come nobody's really sounding the alarm in this place? It doesn't seem like it's a huge city or anything. This is kind of out in the country in a smaller town. So there's no panic being in. He's killed several people now, but there's no, huge panic that's setting in. Apparently news is spreading a little bit that something is going on, but, no huge panic. People aren't locking the doors or whatever. People are doing their thing. And, he's just popping out of here and there and killing people. Again, all fine and good. We're getting, some good practical effects too. We're seeing some things. I'm not going to say every death he did, was maybe hugely realistic. I think there's one that maybe put, I was all for it for blood and guts standpoint, but maybe pushed the bounds of maybe what he should have been able to do. But whatever, we'll go with it. It was splattering fun. And then kind of as he goes on, you're kind of not only that I was kind of thinking, well, what is going on in this town that no one's really reacting to this, but also, kind of, it was kind of missing a little bit of that element of like, what's this dude's problem? Like, and who is he, and that kind of thing. I obviously as the film goes on, some of those questions are answered and so forth, but early on it's just, hey, this dude is just mad and he just killing people. There was a point I was even wondering, is he, did he die and come back? I mean, how is, he just doing this or so forth? Again, he has a hat on, but he's kind of like tilted down, so you don't hugely get a whole grasp of his face till maybe after a few deaths. So, you're kind of looking for, okay, he's not really wearing a mask. Is he scarred? What is his problem? Why is he here killing all these people? So, early on, you're just seeing this guy, and that's what he's doing. So, obviously, so if you're into the blood and guts thing and that kind of thing, and if you're like me and you just, just happy just seeing a guy on the screen, just, one person after the other, that might work for you. If you're looking for a little bit more of like I said, the typical horror thing where, you get the kill and then it kind of moves on and you get this huge introduction to this group and lots of talking and lots of blah, 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 and this and that, and let's feel for the characters and this and that, I think that it's going to be absent of that, at least early on. as it kind of goes on, then it will pick up on certain things. There will be a few moments of extendedness of that. There's a young group here, so you have a group of kids that are friends, and obviously some are closer than others, and then boyfriends and girlfriends of that. So you will get all that. I mean, it's not void of any of that. It's not simply a guy just randomly killing everybody throughout the film, which maybe I would have been fine with as well. Let's see that. Let's see that one day. Just hey, movie turns on, this guy kills, and then just kills, and then cut to a scene, and people are doing things, just death, and there's death, and then at the end of the movie, whatever is gonna happen, and that's it. Let's just do that one time and get it out of our system. But yeah, no, you will learn, a little bit about the kids, their relation, whatever. And then, then obviously this big head-to-head, he's going to square off with this group of kids towards the end. I don't want to get too much into the end of it. There was a moment or two, I don't know if it was just the way I was watching or whatever, it seemed a little bit dark. It was hard to kind of tell exactly what was going on for a little bit there. Again, I don't know if that was truly how it was filmed or just how I was watching it. I don't know. But, I think, again, you don't want to lean too much on the acting here. I didn't think it was, out of bounds anywhere. But, again, probably a younger cast or whatever. So there were a few moments here that was kind of... there was also, one or two reactions to some of the kills where, if a kill happened in front of another person, their reaction to it, I was kind of like, what are you doing? Like, either you jump in or you run. Why are you kind of in between? There was one specifically, I don't really want to mention it, but there was one where I thought, what is the other what is the person who's not getting killed doing? Like, they're either not running and they're not participating and helping, they're just kind of there. And it's kind of like, what is happening here? Do something more constructive. But yeah, so the ending is okay. Again, like I said, eventually you'll get filled into some of the stuff about the killer and what is going on there. So maybe they went a little bit in a different way about kind of structuring things here, which was fine. So I think for a new production, a group, and for an indie horror film, it was fine, and especially if you're looking for blood and guts and a slasher and whatever, and just kind of really digging into that, just digging into the deaths and the kills and so forth. I think that's fine. If you're looking for other stuff, maybe it won't work out as well for you, and so forth. So I think that's the best way to kind of sum this up. Again, I don't know. We'll see where this film is shown, but if you do come across it, that's what it is. I think I will try to remember to share the press release at the bottom of this review in the comment section and so forth, down below. They do, I believe, if I remember correctly, do have some shorts online on their YouTube channel, which I think there is a link in the press release. So if you do want to get a kind of idea of their work besides this film, you can certainly check them out. So definitely encourage you guys to support indie horror, and whether it's this film or some of their other stuff on YouTube, which is free and available to watch. You guys can check that out and see what you think of that as well. As for a rating, I think I'm going to give it 2.5 pools of blood out of 5. Again, like the bloodiness and whatever. But, it was, just, I appreciate what they did and kind of maybe... To me, it seemed like they were trying to do it a little different. Maybe it wasn't on purpose or whatever, but I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I'm not going to complain about death after death after death or whatever. And I don't need that other stuff. But yeah, so we'll leave it at that. Again, not for everybody, but certainly for me. So that's 2.5 pools of blood out of 5. So with that, horrorsquaredreviews.blogspot.com is where you can find all my reviews written in video. Certainly tons of video reviews for a while now, so you can like, subscribe, and do everything else that everybody wants to do here on YouTube. If not, no worries, it is okay. I thank you for your time regardless. Twitter, Facebook information down below as well. Feel free to reach out to me there, talk about this film if you have been one of the lucky ones to see it, or other films, or you also are an indie filmmaker and you want me to review it or take a look at it or have anything to share, please feel free to reach out to me there or in the comment section down below. So with that, I'll catch you on the next review, horror fans.